We are talking about an ethnic cleansing unprecedented in history. The Nakba is for Iran also. Anybody who dare to say no to Israel and not to accept the dominance and the hegemony, see what happened to Iran. One of the achievements of the 7th of October is the defeat of the Israeli narrative.
Hello everyone, I'm Mohammad Mahdi, talking to you from the historic Iranian city of Ray. Welcome to Insights in Focus, an independent videocast series that challenges assumptions, sparks curiosity, and uncovers fresh perspectives on the world. We're going to have insightful conversations with leading intellectuals, academics, activists, politicians, policymakers, religious leaders, and in short, voices brimming with fresh insights. We will dive deep into the most pressing global issues of our time. Join us as we question, explore, and inspire together for the curious minds. On this very first episode, we're going to talk about Palestine. Not just as a topic close to my heart, but as one of the front lines in humanity's enduring war against fascism, imperialism, and colonialism. We will reclaim the full story, reminding everyone that history did not begin on October 7, 2023. Joining us for that essential reminder is our guest, Dr. Saleh Abdel-Jawad, a Palestinian political scientist and prominent historian specializing in the Palestinian Nakba of 1948 and Israeli occupation tactics. Dr. Abdel-Jawad, welcome to Insights in Focus and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Let's start with your personal connection to this topic. As I understand, you were born in 1952, just 4 years after the Nakba of 1948 in the West Bank town of Al-Bira, a place that's woven into the very fabric of Palestinian resilience. Tell us a little about your family roots there and what you remember from growing up under Israeli occupation.
Okay, Al-Bira town is the twin city of Ramallah. So we are talking about the de facto capital of the Palestinian Authority and what remains of Palestine. Ramallah and Al-Bira, they are 15 kilometers north of Jerusalem. I was born to a family which very related to the land. And my grandmother and grandfather were peasants, and fact that also they lived in a town which is just 15 kilometers north of Jerusalem shaped the relation with this holy city, which is, let's say, sacred for the three religion, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And this town was supposed to be a peace city. Unfortunately, for political reasons and through history, the place became the site of bloody massacres and, let's say, difficult situation. One of the worst was when the Crusaders invaded the city in 1099 and committed a great massacres against the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians themselves. Okay, and the other event, difficult event, was the occupation of the city in 1967. Now, my father, who became at one point of his life the mayor of the town. He was 17 years old when the Nakba occurred, and it shaped totally his life and destiny and fate, because he saw the thousands of refugees who were forced to leave their land, homes, and towns, villages, and became dispossessed, totally poor, and they didn't have even a shelter to stay. So this event shaped his life, and lately he became, in February 1967, the mayor of the town. 4 months later, the town was occupied by Israeli forces, as the rest of the West Bank, and his life was more difficult than the Norwegian mayor in John Steinbeck novel. And the fact that he was a man of justice, resisting the occupation with non-violent means. On the end, he was deported by Israeli forces with another 7 leaders of the West Bankers, and they were thrown in the desert in the Jordan Valley. And for 21 years, we were unable to see him, and he was totally separated from his land, from his family, from his sons. So it was difficult. As for me, it's interesting because also another war shaped my personality and destiny. It was the occupation of 1967, and the town was bombarded in the second day of the war. It was Tuesday at 9 o'clock by Israeli airplanes, and on the afternoon by Israeli artillery. And we have the same images of 1948, people who were forced to immigrate by fear of the airplanes and bombardments. And my life under occupation, as any other Palestinian, I was in prison, and at one point banned from going abroad. And it is difficult. People don't understand. I mean, I live in a town which only 15 kilometers from Jerusalem, and since many years I was unable to just go visit for once the town. People will say this is exaggeration. No, it is the situation. Now we live under daily attack by settlers. So the genocide actually, and the attempt to drive the Palestinians out of their land, is also going on the West Bank as it is in Gaza. There is different on the style only.
I'm glad that you mentioned this. It's essential for people to understand that this is not about Hamas or Gaza, and it is the entire Palestinian nation enduring a brutal, unrelenting occupation. That said, when we discuss the history of this occupation, it is striking how there are still people, whether misinformed or uninformed, holding on to outdated narratives. One claim that cuts deep for me is the idea that Palestinians brought it on themselves. It was their fault. They sold the land to the Zionists. It's a claim that shifts responsibility onto the victims. Could you explain what actually happened during the Nakba, the catastrophe of 1948, and on the scale of those so-called land sales, and how marginal was their role? Let's dismantle this distortion once and for all.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that we can use the present to understand the past, because this is an occasion. What happening in Gaza or what happening in Lebanon can give us the light about what happened on the past, because we can see how the Israelis preach every day the ceasefire in Gaza or in Lebanon, and the whole Israeli narrative is based on lies. And you know, they took the Nazi idea of repeating the lies and exaggerating as a method to implement these lies in the memory. As for the land sale, you know, before the Nakba, the Israelis have only 5.6% of all the land of Palestine. And some of these lands were, yes, sold by landowners, but most of them were landowners who live in Lebanon before the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which separated Lebanon from Palestine, from Transjordan, from Syria. It's very complicated. I don't deny that in some cases, because of the conditions which were created by the British to facilitate the emergence of a Jewish homeland, some people were tricked to sell this land, but this still remained a very small portion. In most of the cases, the Palestinians resisted and tried. They are very linked to their land, and this is why they let's say the Israelis went to the war, to the total war, where you can by mobilizing all your forces defeat the enemy, which is the native population of Palestine. You have to understand, people, when they talk about the Nakba, they think about it as only a military defeat. The Nakba was destroying most of the Palestinian villages who came under Israeli authority by force in 1948. During the Nakba, the Israelis occupied 11 Palestinian cities. 5 of them, you know, Majdal, Safad, Tiberyad, Bir Saba, and Bisan, were completely depopulated. Not a single Palestinian remained. In the other 5 cities, which is Haifa, Akka, Yafa, Lod, and Ramle, only between 5 to 10% of the population remained. These cities were the incubators of the, let's say, emerging Palestinian national identity and culture. They expelled 750,000 Palestinians from a population of 1,350,000 Palestinians. If you see, for example, the West Coastal Plains, only 2 villages remains in the whole coast, Palestinian coast. These are the Jisr al-Fridis and Jisr al-Zarqa. If you go south of Jerusalem until Gulf of Aqaba, which now is named like with the city of Eilat, not a single one Palestinian village remained. So we are talking about an ethnic cleansing unprecedented in history. Also, there are other lies that the Palestinians left their countries because the Arab leaders, their Arab and Palestinian leaders, political and military leaders, asked them to, let's say, to evacuate these villages. These are 100% lies. And as I said, we have now to, I think, one of the achievement of the 7th of October is the defeat of the Israeli narrative. Okay, and this goes also retroactively to the Nakba, to see the Nakba through the eyes of the present. So we are talking about a lot of lies, and one of these lies also, it's that always the Palestinians miss the opportunity to have peace. This is a big lie, and this phrase was shaped in 1973 by Israeli Foreign Minister Abba Iban, and he, let's say, launched this phrase. And since that time, since 1973, the Israelis don't hesitate to repeat this saying that Palestinians missed the opportunity all the time. Actually, the Arabs, not only the Palestinians accepted Oslo Agreement, and the Israelis refused to implement it. In 2002, the whole Arab countries in the Arab Summit in Beirut, 2002, they launched the Arab Initiative, which supposed to recognize Israel and to have normal relation with Israel. And there were three, let's say, logical conditions: the acceptance of a peaceful Palestinian state and a just solution for the refugees. And of course, Israel all the time refused all these offers. And what is going on? What is going even with Iran today, even with Lebanon, even in Gaza? Most importantly, to see the West Bank, where you have a Palestinian Authority which is very moderate politically and against violence, and as a matter of fact, coordinate with Israeli authorities and do all its best to have the stability of the settlers. And despite all this, we are under a total and daily attack, day and night. So this is a big lie, and people have to re-examine and to rewrite these stories.
Exactly. And now turning to your scholarly work, one profoundly resonant term that you have used to encapsulate Israeli policies is sociocide, the deliberate and systematic dismantling of social structures and communities. Could you elaborate on how this insidious process unfolds?
Okay. The Israeli aims and objective is to have the land without the population. They used this in 1948 through total war. Let me just make a definition of total war. Total war, that you are obliged to mobilize all your forces, human, financial, military, political, diplomatic, even intellectual, and even artistic, to defeat the enemy. This is what the Israelis did in 1948. Now, after the occupation of 1967, they wanted to achieve the same objective, taking the land without the population. So they elaborate a process, very slow but constant, which make the life of a Palestinian family or the whole society so difficult that the only way to escape this is to leave the country. This is done through, first of all, changing the social structure. Most of the Palestinians were peasants, So they took their land, they took the water, okay, and they have military laws which make the whole question of working the land so difficult. So they change the social structure and make the Palestinians mainly workers in daily basis in Israeli factories without any relation with the land. Second, by what the Jewish American writer Sarah Roy, who worked in the American consulate in Jerusalem, and through this position was able to discover Israeli policy through the economic situation of the Palestinians. And it called this the politics of de-development, meaning that you, especially when it comes to industry, you know, you push the industry, the agriculture, the financial, the services into a declining mood, okay? Third, by eliminating the elites, the mayors, the intellectual elites, by expulsion or by assassination or by imprisonment, okay? Fourth, by making a lot of collaborators. People don't, I will give an example, very important example. The population of the West Bank and Gaza Strip is about 4 million Palestinians. Since 1967, 1 million, which means 25% of the population were in prison. This never happened in the history of even any dictatorship or any national movement. Why you put 25% of the population in prison? It's not because only they are resisting, but because in the Israeli sociocide policy, imprisonment is let's say a refinery where you put everything, every Palestinian through, and you study him and you see his, let's say, strong points, his weakness, and try to also study the whole society. And by knowing this society, you discover the strong points and the weak points. There is also the question of checkposts. People don't understand. The West Bank is only 5,500 kilometers. And I will tell you something. I have a car since 6 years. I only drive it during these 6 years, 16,000 kilometers only, because it's very, very, very difficult to move, to travel between my town and another town. As I said before, another example, I was unable to visit Jerusalem to go to pray, okay, since so many years. So it's by also controlling totally all water sources, okay? So the whole thing, and by creating an atmosphere of sorrow every day we are under attacks from the Israelis. This is sociocide. This is sociocide. Always live in a difficult situation and in a sad situation. And for the Palestinians, on the end, the only way to leave this, let's say, situation is to leave the country. And this is the objective of sociocide. Now, just to finish, since the, let's say, the objective of sociocide is to get rid of the population, it means that you want to achieve the destruction of the Palestinian society. So sociocide, it's a form of genocide.
Indeed. And my next question, we now see more and more scholars and activists speak of the Nakba not as a single event frozen in 1948, but as an ongoing Nakba, a process of dispossession, displacement, and erasure that continues to this very day. What exactly do we mean when we say the Nakba is ongoing? How do the mechanisms that we saw in 1948 still operate in the West Bank, East al-Quds, Gaza, inside the 1948 territories, and even against the so-called Palestinian citizens of Israel?
Yes, I want to tackle this point, but also to add the idea that the Nakba is a continuous process arrived to me at the late 90s. The evacuation by force of the Palestinians didn't happen only in 1948. I was mentioning one of the Palestinian cities, naming Majdal. This town was evacuated totally in 1950. I mean, the Israelis continued after 1948 evacuating the Bedouin tribes from the Negev. They used the 1956 war with Egypt to expel Palestinians in the north of Galilee toward Syria. The 1967 war led to another 300,000 Palestinians also expelled from Palestine. Not a single day, the Israelis stopped their policies of taking the land and getting rid of the population. But I want to also emphasize another idea about the Nakba. The Nakba, in the mind of historians and political scientists, is tackled as it's something happened to the Palestinians. No, the Nakba is by excellence something, it's the Nakba of the Arab population. It's the Nakba is for Iran also. I mean, maybe the Iranians didn't get this until now. The fact that anybody who dare to say no to Israel and not to accept the dominance and the hegemony, I'm sure the fact that Iran want to have a peaceful nuclear, let's say, a program, but see what happened to Iran. Why we are talking, the Nakba arrived to Iraqis. I mean, if you want to understand why Iraq was occupied by Americans in 2003, it's not because of Saddam Hussein. I don't think that there is an Arab leader who served the West than Saddam Hussein when he attacked Iran in 1980. You see, there were no real justification. What happened in Syria is also related to Israel. Okay, we have to understand what happened in Arab countries after 1950, all these military coups, okay, in Egypt, in Syria, in Iraq, was let's say, direct result of the Nakba. So, and Arab expenses for defense and buying arms is also related to Israel. So the Nakba is continuous, and the Nakba is not only for Palestinians. It's something very important, shaped for the whole region.
Exactly. And for those who might not know, Benjamin Netanyahu was a strong advocate for the invasion of Iraq and the toppling of Saddam's regime. In 2002, he even went to testify before the US Congress and stated that a US invasion of Iraq was, quote, a good thing. Now, moving to our next question, we know that declassified documents from 1948 in the Israeli archives were abruptly reclassified in recent years, apparently after officials recognized that they revealed uncomfortable truth about the Nakba. Of course, not the whole truth, but at least maybe partially. Fast forward to 2025, 2 years of genocide. We are seeing a similar pattern of attempts to hide and suppress the truth and to rewrite or more accurately falsify the history of atrocities that billions witnessed in real time through the live streams on their phones and TV screens. Dr. Abdul Jawad, in the face of this relentless suppression of truth, what concrete steps do you believe historians, journalists, activists, and everyday people must take to fight back and preserve the record?
I know this process. I mean, the Israelis have laws which normally supposed to declassify the political documents after 30 years and military documents after 50 years, except in three cases. One case is that this will destroy the image of Israel, and the second, that these declassified information will bring risk to the state of Israel. And the third, if the authors of negative, let's say, practices are still alive, you know. So in general, Israel had these laws which theoretically positive, let's say. But then they discovered these materials were used first by what we call it new historians, Tom Segev, Benny Morris, Amnon Ratzkin-Raz, Yuri Ram, Baruch Kimmerling. I'm talking about historians and sociologists and and Avi Schleim. And Palestinians used these, let's say, new archival without having the total accessibility to these archives. One of the things which I really think that we don't have to depend on these archives. This is very important. I mean, I was the director of Birzeit Research Center in since 93 to 97, 1993 to 1997. And I studied many villages, and we discovered from oral histories these massacres, and I do it with, let's say, with credibility. I mean, let's say, when I interviewed the eyewitnesses, I was very harsh with them, cross-checking their testimonies to arrive to conclude with, let's say, very, let's say, right stories without any lies or exaggeration. So we don't need, we have, first of all, to believe in ourselves and our testimonies. But on the same time, whenever there is an occasion to get testimonies or documents or archives from the Israeli side, we have to use it. And our universities have to, let's say, to go fast before the closure of these archives. But and this is why in 1996, after a few, I mean, I worked in 9 villages, and we discovered 6 massacres in these 9 villages. So I wrote the first idea that massacres were the rule and not the exception as Deir Yassin. And the second idea, which I came with, was this idea of its continuous, the continuity of the Nakba. And the third one was that the Nakba is also an Arab Nakba and a Muslim Nakba. Not only because I think what is Iran facing is part, it's just because they want justice for Palestinians. The problem with Iran and also with Turkey is not because Turkey is, let's say, give refuge to some Palestinian Muslim Islamist leaders, or Iran because is doing, because I'm sure that is Iranian nuclear program is not for building a bomb. And despite everything, they continued. The problem, they don't want any regional strong power. So if today, they will not also agree to the Saudis. It's not only Iran. And this is, I mean, this was very clear after, Netanyahu bragging about the new Middle East. And when the Saudis said, okay, we want to normalize and we want to recognize you, but let the Palestinians have a Palestinian state, and they say to the Saudis, okay, give them the Palestinian state on your land. So whenever, look what happened with the Qataris. I mean, the Qataris were intermediate between Israel and doing a nice job for the Americans in Afghanistan, and they harbored Hamas leaders because the Americans also, and despite everything. So this is very important. We have to understand the situation, and frankly, to be very clever, because we are facing an enemy who's strong. We have to admit this. Okay? The idea that this is a tiger of paper was a mistake from my point of view.
Yes, powerful, but not invincible. And now, as we wrap up with our final question, let's acknowledge how this US-Israeli genocide in Gaza has served as a litmus test for global conscience, and frankly, far too many have failed. But there were also many bright spots. The largest, most sustained solidarity movement for Palestine in history, seismic shift in public consciousness across continents, students' encampments that refuse to be silenced, and above all, the unbreakable Palestinian resistance that has shattered myth of invincibility and inspired millions worldwide. What do you see as the most significant victories, be it political, cultural, and moral, that have come out of this tragic chapter?
Look, first of all, we have to understand that the population in Gaza paid a huge price. And I wrote an article in a journal, the best social science journal in the Arab world. It's called Idafat. And this study named the, let's say, the exceptionality of genocide in Gaza. Because if we put aside the numbers, we are talking about, I mean, let's say 80,000 killed when we take in consideration those who are under the rubble. And I mean, it's maybe less than what happened in Rwanda, or let's say what happened in different countries. But this is amazing. I mean, the fact that the massacre, the genocide was diffused, indirect, the fact that the killers admitted and never tried to hide, the fact that Western democracies, as you said, participated, the fact that the whole Gaza Strip is only, I mean, this genocide happened in only 360 kilometers. The whole thing make it exceptional. So it's very difficult, and it's very difficult to talk about achievements, or let's say there are a lot of achievements, but taking in mind the heavy price, it's very difficult to talk about achievements, let's say. But one of them, first of all, is that the Israeli narrative is no longer accepted. This is the most achievement. And we can see that last 2 years, people who leave Israel is much more than those who are coming, okay? The fact that we are living a rotten, total rotten world order, which cannot be tolerated more. That it completely make these Western democracies naked, you know, totally naked. Nobody can today take it for real, all this discourse about democracy, about human rights.
Exactly. This utter disregard for international law and open defiance of the rulings of the International Court of Justice has made and is still making a mockery of the so-called rules-based international order. Thank you very much, Dr. Saleh Abdel Jawad, for your great insights and for joining us on Insights in Focus.
Thank you.
And to you, our viewers, stay curious, stay engaged. Until next time.